You mentioned reinvention coaching. This is something that I am super passionate about. It all kind of started being in a career where I found myself extremely burnt out and wondering, how do I get out of this? How do I find that passion and that purpose again in life? And that's where the whole reinvention coaching process began. And it's all about recreating our life, overcoming our limits to step into a more limitless life. And I'm excited to be on the show today to simply talk about that. Maybe the person listening here today is saying, wow, I'm burnt out of my job. How do I find that passion and that purpose again? You have to sit there and determine, how am I going to move forward with this? And there is essentially an ego death of an identity that you were attached to. Whether it was self-chosen or not, you have to sit there and realize we put so much of our identity, many of us anyways, put much of our identity in our career. So what are you now that you don't have that career? What are you now that you don't have that steady paycheck coming in? And it takes a hit to your self-worth.
Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Financial Mastery Simplified. I am your host, Jacqueline or Jax Crider. Today we have Ms. Megan Anderson on with us. She is an expert in reinvention coaching. She actually coached me, and we are so excited to have her. So welcome, Megan. Tell us a little bit more about who you are, what you do, and why you're excited to be on the show today.
So first off, thank you for having me. You mentioned reinvention coaching. This is something that I am super passionate about. It all kind of started being in a career where I found myself extremely burnt out and wondering, how do I get out of this? How do I find that passion and that purpose again in life? And that's where the whole reinvention coaching process began. And it's all about recreating our life, overcoming our limits to step into a more limitless life. And I'm excited to be on the show today to simply talk about that. Maybe the person listening here today is saying, wow, I'm burnt out of my job. How do I find that passion and that purpose again?
Yeah, and I love that. And you and I were talking a little bit before the show that, sometimes reinvention happens because we're forced, right? Like sometimes we reach that point on our own, we figure that out, and we say, hey, it's time for me to step into something new. And sometimes we're kind of forced into it, right? Maybe there is we get laid off, or um, also could be like a death situation, right? Somebody passed away. Could be that the death of a relationship, so divorce or just splitting, right? People together for a long time and they split up, things like that. And I think a lot of people don't really take into account that all of those big, large changes like that, they have a lot of financial implications, but there's a lot of emotional underpinning, right? That like needs to be sort of dealt with, handled, thought through. And it makes a financial piece hard if you're not willing to lean in and figure out what this next step reinvention wise is, because then you're struggling to be in financial alignment if you don't kind of have an idea of like who you are, what you want to do, and like where are we heading, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And as far as the financial aspect goes too, you mentioned you don't always have a choice, right? Now, thankfully, in my situation, I had saved up enough to be able to manage and create this new reinvention process and do it in a way that didn't create financial stress. But as you mentioned, sometimes you don't have a choice. Sometimes you get laid off and you have a family and you have to figure that out. And you might not have the luxury of being able to have that time to be able to sit there to digest everything. But one thing that I think is very, very common when it comes to reinvention, whether it was chosen or not, is that you have to sit there and determine, how am I going to move forward with this? And there is essentially an ego death of an identity that you were attached to. Whether it was self-chosen or not, you have to sit there and realize we put so much of our identity, many of us anyways, put much of our identity in our career. So what are you now that you don't have that career? What are you now that you don't have that steady paycheck coming in? And it takes a hit to your self-worth.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I think that is a really, really good point, because I talk a lot about how we tie a lot of our self-worth to money, right? And so absolutely, if with all these big life changes that happen, right, through either by choice or by circumstance, right? Situations arising and things like that. I think a lot of the emotional turmoil comes from the uncertainty of like, how is the money going to look? right? How are we going to survive? How are we going to maintain maybe, okay, we have this big change here, but like, how are we going to maintain the lifestyle or the life or the things that we've built? And the funny thing for me is that I realized when, I mean, I've been through several really, really crazy big life changes. And with the crazy financial situation of our house flooding, I had to start asking myself questions about what actually really mattered, right? Because I definitely held a pretty high standard lifestyle, and all of a sudden now we're in essence almost bankrupted by this crazy situation that had transpired. And so, what really does matter? Do I really care about some of those things? And the answer is on some of them, yes, I do care, right? And maybe it's not something I can have immediately, down, I can have it again down the path. And then some of the things I'm like, man, I put a lot of weight and a lot of um thought process of like, this is something that I wanted, when really, when I took the time to step back and ask myself, is it really important? Is it really something that I need or want? And the answer really was no, right?
Right. Well, and you know my journey. I sold my house, sold my Porsche to ultimately buy a van, and I've been traveling in the van the past year and a half. So aside from leaving my corporate job, stepping into reinvention coaching, being more of an entrepreneur, I'm also living nomadically. And I feel like I've lived 9 different lives because there was a part of me that was so wrapped up in the needing the car, needing the shoes, needing to hit my sales goal every month, needing all of these things, right? As kind of a status quo. And when I really got into the van and I started forcing myself to live more simplistically and ultimately not having the space, right? Like, I don't have the space to have all the new clothes or all the shoes. And it really got me to understand and visually see, what do I need? And ultimately, what actually makes me happy in life. And oftentimes, you know what I found is that going out and buying that handbag or those shoes, that was really just covering up where I wasn't so happy about some area of my life. I just needed that little dopamine fix. I will say sometimes I do miss my Amazon Prime and being able to order stuff. But again, you don't need it. And you start to realize what little you actually need to ultimately make you happy and what actually you want to spend money on, right? What gives you that return and happiness and fulfillment and purpose?
Yeah, it's a really good point. And it's interesting. I mean, part of the reason that the whole purpose for the podcast was like your life, your terms, is that I really, really, really hate the concept of the one size fits all. I hate it in every respect. I hate it in education. I hate it in money. I don't like it, period, because we're all unique individuals, right? And I also even think that there are seasons of life, right? Like, just because you've chosen that this is what you want to do right now, you want to live in a van, you want to travel all around, does not necessarily mean that this will be the season and what you want to do forever. Or it could be. You could be totally happy with it, and you're going to do this, until you leave this planet. Like, that's fine too, right? There's nothing wrong with it. But a lot of times we have been so pigeonholed into societal rules and obligations, and this is how everything should look, and this is how all the standards should be, that we haven't even stepped back to ask ourselves, we like, what do you even really want? Like, if the world was your oyster and literally there were no limits, no limits on money, no limits on time, no limits on anything, what would you want? What would you do? How would money look? How would time look, right? And a lot of times what people are looking for is they're looking for somebody else to give them an answer that no one else can
Hmm.
give them, right? Because just because I could tell you how I have reached my own level of success in my life, right, be it financial and or otherwise, even if I gave you my exact blueprint, I wrote it all out, and I gave it to you in a nice lovely package and handed it off, it wouldn't be the perfect way for you to handle your life, right? Even if we're super similar, it doesn't matter. Like, it's just not that way. And so I have a hard time with sort of the financial rules and the societal rules, and all of these things that come out. And I think that's why we are needing so many dopamine hits, right? Like, how many times we all are so addicted to our phone? Well, why? Because we are just looking to escape like what's happening. If we're super present and super happy with what's going on in our life, you find yourself picking up your phone a heck of a lot less to look for what's going on or what exciting thing is happening elsewhere.
Right. And I want to dive into it a little bit more too when you talk about desires and these goals, right? You touched on it beautifully. How many of these desires do we have that are not actually our own? And we dove into this in reinvention coaching. How many of your desires came from your childhood, came
Yep.
from some experience that hurt you in the past that deep down, once we got down to it, well, you know what? I don't desire to put on makeup every single day. I don't desire to live this way. And once
Yep.
you understand that and you comprehend that, oh, that actually is not what I desire, that came from an outside source. Now you can go inward and you can ask yourself, what is it that I truly desire? And you talk about our phones and all of this. Oftentimes, we're shopping, we're picking up our phone, we're doing all of this because we need that external validation. I don't know
Yep.
about you, but that has been a big thing in my life. I was constantly needing external validation in order to feel good and worthy in myself. And how did that show up? That showed up in my relationships, that showed up in how much money I wanted to make, the things that I chose, right? But what starts to happen when you go through this reinvention, go through this transition, whether it's chosen or not chosen, is you ultimately have to determine how to give yourself your own validation, how to uncover those desires. And here's the thing about desire: you don't have to go finding it, it's there. It's inside of you already. You just have to get quiet enough and be willing enough to actually listen.
Yeah, and that's so incredibly powerful the way that you said that, and it's so true, right? I tell people all the time, and it's so weird on the mortgage side because what happens is that people think that on the mortgage side, like my job is just to give you the loan, which is one of the bigger jobs, right? On the mortgage side, like it is our job to figure out how to get you the loan so that you can buy the house that you're looking for, and that is the point. However, there is something that should happen with an expert who actually really cares about your situation financially, and it's helping you dig out a little bit more about what is it that you actually desire, because you have a desire within you, right? And as questions are asked to you, as you are challenged to think about it in your own mind, in your own heart, in your own way, what happens is that you start coming to some realizations. But you're right, you have to be not only willing to ask yourself the questions, but you have to allow yourself to be still enough and quiet enough to hear your own inner thoughts. Because the problem is that we don't do that anymore, right? We don't do staying still, staying quiet. Like that isn't really a thing. And a lot of us need it. We need to just be able to step back, to get quiet, to get clarity. But society has taught like, oh my gosh, you have the next thing. Like you're already behind. Like continue doing the thing and continue whatever. I mean, no wonder we feel like we're on a financial hamster wheel and every other kind of hamster wheel. Like, and we can just never stop. I mean, we're just running in the direction that somebody told us to run, and we don't even know if we're going down the right path.
Right. And, we talk about desire, and desire is great. I desire to be a millionaire. I desire to retire by the age of 45. I desire all these things. But we also have to get back to reality at the same time. You can desire things, and that is a certain level of reality, right? But we have to get
For sure.
honest about our life right now. What is your financial situation right now, right? What is the life that reality? Can you live that life? Can you afford that house based off of your position right now?
Right.
And for anyone that is going through a transition, I was sitting in this meeting the other day, and I forget her name who was speaking, but she basically said, so for anyone, like you're quitting your job or you just left or you got laid off or whatever the case may be, I want you to imagine a compass, right? So you have north, east, south, west. Now, down here in the south, that's your safe bet. So what would be your safe bet? Maybe it's going back into something that you always did. Maybe it's just staying at the job that you're unfulfilled at, but it's safe. What is that safe option? Right. And then we go over to the West, and this is kind of the quick fix. So let's say you need to make money right now. Well, maybe your quick fix is getting into a sales job right away, whatever it is. Then we go over to the East side, and the East side is more this entrepreneurial aspect. This is your desires. Like if you could do whatever you wanted to do, what is it? Is it a podcast? Is it retreats? Is it, blogging? What is it? List all that out. And then there's the north side. And this is, what is the best possible outcome? Maybe it's a combination of some of them. Maybe it's you take the sales job in some aspects that are fulfilling, that take the pressure off of being able to do the entrepreneurial things, right? So this is where we can kind of get into a space where it's, okay, now how do we really sit down in reality and kind of create that? And then on top of that, we worked with this a lot in reinvention coaching. It all comes down to that choice too. We have two different choices that we can make. We can either make a choice that is going to serve that overall vision that we have, or we can make a choice that is going to self-sabotage that vision that we have.
Right.
And we have to be honest with ourselves. And it's okay to self-sabotage. We all do it, right? But at the end of the day, how fast can you come back, realign yourself, and step back into that choice that is going to serve that vision?
Yeah, and that's so true. I think so oftentimes you're right. We forget that. And we do forget reality, right? Like it's totally fine to dream, and it is totally fine to, work on tapping into your potential or whatever. But you're right. You do have to take realistic steps. That's actually an interesting juxtaposition of something that's happened, in my opinion, in the last 10 years or so, is this idea that people don't believe they do have to take the proper steps to get to the goal, right? Like they just expect it to like fall out of the sky and hit them on the head, and then that's it. Like they're going to have it all together. And I'm like, unfortunately, that isn't how it works. And you're right. Sometimes it is a little bit of a combination of things, right? Especially when it comes financially. You can't necessarily just make it work all one way right away. And it takes time to build that up, figure that out, and how does that look? And I think so oftentimes the people are going through transitions, especially really big ones. Like we've been dealing, and I told you earlier, with a lot of divorce situations. That's something that I've been through personally. And this is a huge, huge financial turmoil situation for so many, many reasons. But a lot of it being because obviously now you're taking where there was two people, and maybe two people bringing in income, maybe only one person bringing in income, but two people that were like pulling together and pooling resources together, be it financial or otherwise, are now going and creating separate entities again, right? They're splitting that all up. And oftentimes I think that people are, one, not being necessarily realistic. They want to do a lot of burying their heads in the sand, right? They don't want to ask hard questions because there's so much emotional turmoil there, with what they're experiencing. But then also, I think that it financially is really devastating. It's kind of like a little bit in flux with like what I was dealing with this huge flood. It was like all of a sudden you felt like everything was together, and then it just wasn't, right? It just all fell apart. And now how do I pick up the pieces again to figure out? And I do agree, choice is a lot of it. You have to make yourself quiet, and then you're going to have to proactively be making choices and realizing, like you said, self-sabotage. I don't know if you have experienced this. I'm sure you have. But for me, the hardest part about self-sabotage is because we all do it, but there's so much shame with it, right? It's like you are like beating yourself up about it. Like, how dare, look, I made a commitment to be this other person, and then now look at all the stupid things I did, and I didn't do it well. So I think that you bringing up the alignment aspect and like basically realigning yourself, getting back to center as quickly as possible, is so important, because people just don't realize that you are going to have moments where you're going to step off the path and mess it
100%.
up.
That self-sabotage, though, an important aspect of that I think can really help with the shame is going back and seeing how that has served you, how that's protected you, right? And we really dove into that in our process of coaching as well, is going through and determining, when did that belief start, that you started making that choice of self-sabotaging, right? Because it wasn't always self-sabotaging when it started. It likely started in your childhood as a way to protect you and a way to be in the world. But then through adulthood, that's when it started to keep you from fulfilling your goals and your vision and, this big dream that you ultimately have. And coming to that realization and seeing the gift of it. And that allows you to drop that shame. Because I don't know about you, but every time I have ever lived in shame, all it does is create a shame cycle. It is very hard to get out and make the self-serving choice when you're constantly stuck in that shame cycle. And also, speaking of the gift, no matter what hardship you're going through right now, like, see the gift in all of it. Like, when I left my steady, stable corporate job and I dove into entrepreneurship, there was a gift in taking a step back from, like, I was making enough money where I didn't even look at my bank account. I didn't look at my statements. I didn't know how much I was spending. I didn't feel if I wanted to go buy something that was, $5,000, whatever the case may be. I didn't actually feel that. And I didn't realize how much money I was just spending on things that didn't even matter. I
Yep.
mean, when I went through, because I had to, when I went through, when I had to go through and see where is all my money going, let's budget this, let's get a game plan going. You know how mad I was to see how much money I was spending on subscriptions that I didn't even realize that I was a part of anymore? And as frustrating as that was, look at the gift that there is now. Because now the way that I spend money is more in alignment with my values of how I ultimately want to live my life. And I get to make a choice on the money that I do have on how I'm going to spend that. And it feels so much better.
Stay tuned. We'll be back right after this message from our sponsors.
Welcome to Financial Mastery Simplified, your go-to podcast for making smart money decisions. We break down complex financial topics into easy-to-understand advice you can use every day. Our experts cover everything from budgeting and saving to investing and retirement planning. We give you the tools to take control of your money and build the future you want. With Financial Mastery Simplified, you'll feel informed and empowered to make the best choices for your financial health. Tune in to Financial Mastery Simplified on your favorite podcast platform. Start your journey to financial confidence today.
Visit us at fms.tips and fms.college for more information.
Welcome to House U, where we believe in the power of education. At House U, we're more than just a brand. We're your partner in home ownership, dedicated to educating, equipping, and empowering you every step of the way. Education is at the heart of everything we do. We offer comprehensive resources designed to make home ownership simple and accessible for all. From understanding mortgage options to mastering home maintenance, House U provides the knowledge you need to make informed decisions with confidence. We host workshops and seminars, bringing together experts and community members to share insights and build a stronger, more informed community. Because when you're educated, you're empowered. House U, home ownership made simple for all. Visit our website or contact us today to start your journey with House U. Empower yourself with knowledge and embrace the joy of home ownership.
Thanks for your patience. Now back to our conversation.
Yeah, that is very powerful. I had somebody one time tell me that when you're going through something hard, like you said, sort of where's the gift? Can you be basically find thanks in it? And it's when you can step back and be thankful for the situation that you're in, that you really will not only learn and grow, but you're also going to start gaining this beautiful perspective, right? I mean, people all the time think that I'm crazy. I wouldn't necessarily have chosen my house to flood, but I will tell you that there is a fair bit of things that came out of it, right? I was always the person who poured in to everybody. I was always the one who gave of myself. And for the first time ever, I had to raise my hand and ask for help. I had no choice, right? I was literally put into a situation where, in a lot of ways, financially, like I couldn't hack. And so now, this very independent, person had to raise her hand and be like, hey, can you help me? And the crazy part is so many people rallied around me and said, yes, we will help you. What can I do? How can I help? And I'm very thankful for that, because I think in my own way and in my own head, I got this idea that a lot of people didn't really care about me as deeply as they actually did. And I got to have the privilege and the ability to witness this, to see this, right? To see how this looked. And so often we think even just minor things, right? Like getting sick sucks, right? It's not necessarily the most fun experience, but can you find the beauty in it, right? Your body is telling you that you need to slow down, that you need to relax or whatever, right? Something that I'm never good at because I'm running at 1,000 miles an hour at all times every single day. And so sometimes it's just a good reminder. And so when you can take the pain, the frustration, the anguish that is surrounding whatever scenario, situation that you're in, and turn it in to thankfulness, to gratefulness, I think everything changes as you are making this grand, sort of financial reinvention. And I feel like a lot of people right now are in transition, and a lot of people are having to reinvent themselves right now because there is all of these big changes happening, right? Whether, politically, from like an entrepreneurial aspect, this AI thing, right? This is changing everything, changing a lot in the corporate world. Our economy hasn't necessarily been as strong as we'd like it to be. So there's been a lot of financial turmoil there that has affected things, right? We've seen a lot of changes since COVID, and lots of, marriages, breaking up. There's a lot of strain. And when there's financial pressure, it almost always leads to a lot of like divorce situations. So we're dealing with so much turmoil. And I think it's so, so important to remember exactly what you said. You have to step back and you have to find gratefulness, thankfulness in the scenarios that you really don't want to be grateful for sometimes.
Right. And you highlighted another thing, which is community. Community is so important. And you have to get out there and be willing to find your community. You have to be willing to ask for help. And the other thing I wanted to touch on is, we can sit here and say you should be grateful for the pain and the struggles and all of that. When you're going through it, you're going to be listening to this and you're going to be like, you know what? I'm done listening to this. You guys, like, no, it's going to be too hard when you're in the thick of it, right? But through time, just remember all the times you've gone through a heartbreak, a job change, a death in the family, whatever the case may be. With time, you got to see the gift in that, right? So just trust that ultimately that is going to you're going to see that with time. And the other thing too is we can get so wrapped up in the uncertainty of our situation that it can be so challenging to see anything else. And I just ask you to slow down wherever you're at. I'm guilty of this too, even to this day, right? There's so much uncertainty still in my life, and where am I headed? What's going on? And I was at Winco the other day, and I haven't been to Winco since college. And that's just where I would go shopping in college. It was cheap. You could buy it in bulk, whatever. So I'm at the Winco with my girlfriend and we're checking out. And, I'm blessed because I can go to the grocery store and buy whatever I want, right? I'm not sitting there. I'm not stressed about it. I'm grateful. The lady in front of us, she is buying some apples and some oranges, and she's telling him, no, that's not the price. You need to have a manager come check the price because she thinks it's 10 cents cheaper per pound. I'm sitting there. I'm getting frustrated. I'm like, this is why I don't go to Winco. And in my mind, right, because I've been in corporate world for so long, I'm like, time is money. Does this girl not understand that this is a waste of her time and money?
Right.
And I'm just, I'm thinking in my head, I could pick up the phone, make a few phone calls, and what are you worrying about 20 cents for? I'm just getting frustrated. And I sit there and I take a deep breath and I get grateful for my life. And then there's this girl behind us. She comes up and she says, I left my phone at home. I just realized I don't have enough money in my bank account to pay for my groceries. Can I borrow your phone to call my boyfriend so he can put $50 in my bank account so that I can buy my groceries? And we both kind of felt guilty because we were hesitant to want to give her our phones, right? We're in that day and age where it's like, you don't trust people. What are they going to do with your phone? Who are they going to call? What are you going to be a part of, right? So we're with the phone. We're dialing the number. for her, asking the number so that we feel a little bit more secure about this. It's fine. She calls her boyfriend. He doesn't pick up. She's like, do you mind if I call my mom? She calls her mom, doesn't pick up. And at that point in time, that's when that was me. That was me when I was in college. I didn't have money in college. I would go to the grocery store. I would have my calculator out to see if I could, what all I could buy. I couldn't buy everything that I wanted to. I remember in college, I refused to spend a couple $100s on a bed, and I slept on a blow up mattress for a couple months. And it just instantly, like, you forget these things when you get to a certain level financially in life, and we don't realize how much worse that it can be, and we don't realize, and we forget where we even came from. And it was in that moment I just kind of softened, and I was just like, wow, things could be a lot worse than they are, and I am so grateful for where I'm at right now, even in all of the uncertainty. And so anyone listening that is going through a challenging time, just remember where you came from. And remember how much worse it could be.
Absolutely. So it's interesting. You're right. It's hard to be grateful for what you're going through when you're going through it. Like when you're in the thick of it, you definitely are like God or whatever higher power. Maybe you don't believe in a higher power, like why is this happening to me? What is going on or whatever? And I do try to force myself when I'm going through it to just take a minute and think of some things that I am grateful for, right? Like that I am appreciative for, because I have found that it really truly does change everything about who I am and my viewpoint, right? And where am I putting my worth and my thought process through? Because it's hard, right? Life has its moments of really, really being hard. And you're right, without community, right? Without having other people to sort of help you bring you through it, right? As well as without a grateful heart, it is really, really hard. It's hard to reinvent yourself. It's hard to go through, those challenges. I have experienced the situation that I'll share is with a recent client of ours, going through this divorce process. And the one thing she wanted from the divorce was her house, right? This was something that she wanted for her and her kids, and pretty much gave him all the cash to be able to have the house. What she didn't know, and he didn't tell her, was that he had a silent second, a very large silent second, about 60K worth, on the house that she did not know about. So he was the only one on the mortgage, and he basically had not been making the payments, and he put the property into something called forbearance. Basically, what that means, for those of you who are listening who don't understand that, is he basically just had this loan hanging out where he wasn't making payments. And at the end, he made an agreement with the mortgage company that as opposed to paying all that money up front, they were going to tack it on the back end of the loan. It wasn't going to have a payment or anything. But when you sold, refinanced the house, anything like that, you were then going to have to pay the money. Well, she didn't know that that existed. She also didn't know that the escrow account, which is how your taxes and your insurance are paid when you have a house, that it was about $20,000 delinquent. So about $80,000 difference, right, in what she thought she was going to have to refinance to what she actually had to refinance. She was so stressed out that I messaged her one day, and she was at the hospital because she had stroke level blood pressure. They were literally like, you have to calm down, and if you do not calm down, you're going to stroke out. And I was messaging her, and I was like, I need you to remember something. Your life is worth so much more than this money. And I get it. He did screw you over. He did do you wrong, right? Like, this is a crappy situation, and it sucks. But it is just money. It's not worth you. It's not worth your life, right? Your beautiful children. Like, you do not need, like, to experience this. And I had to just remind her that no matter what happened, like, it was not, her health was not worth this. And so she came out of that. She was like a totally different person when we went to that closing table, right? Like, just, you could just see the relief, right? The stress just leaving her body. And I just want everybody to remember that no matter what you're going through, especially if it's dealing with money, right? If you're listening to this podcast, I'm assuming it's because you want financial mastery in your life and maybe you're going through it right now. Nothing is worth sacrificing yourself for money. It's just not worth it, right? Like it's all fixable no matter what station you're at, no matter what situation you're at, like it is fixable. You just have to remind yourself that there are people who will help, right? Maybe it's not going to come from the place you're expecting, but the help does exist. And again, this is about you getting real with yourself, stepping back, asking yourself what you want financial mastery to look like, and just setting up a plan to take steps forward, and then just executing, right? And whatever that looks like, maybe that looks like for me, enlisting somebody like Megan for coaching, right, to help me understand like how do I take this new person I'm becoming, right, and really amp it. Sometimes that might just mean making some sacrifices that are really hard for a little period of time until you can, get everything together. But it's right there for the taking. You just have to be willing to see things through a different lens and lean in.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned taking action. That's what it's all about. It's about taking forward action. And again, you might decide, you take an action and realize it's not in alignment. Doesn't matter. Get right back to it. Get back to taking that action. And it can be so small. I mean, how small were some of the actions that we took in reinvention coaching when we were working
Oh
together?
yeah,
They were small, and the
they're
smaller,
very
the
small.
better, because that builds trust with yourself over time. When you realize you're knocking it out of the park week after week after week after week, now all of a sudden it's like, oh, I trust myself to make the right decision. I trust myself to move forward. That confidence is everything that's going to take you to where you want to go.
Yeah, and I love that. Yeah, that is interesting that you talk about confidence and trust because it was something that I was thinking about the other day. I think if we were to roll all the way back, and this is why like reinvention coaching specifically was so helpful, is because if you roll all the way back and you look at yourself when you were really, really little, or you look at one of your children, right? What you're gonna find is that they are built with that confidence within themselves and trust within themselves from the rip. We actually like take it all off because of like situations we've been involved in, a bad scenario, whatever, life stuff, etc. Because like if you literally look at my 4-year-old, like she has full faith and confidence that like she can handle it all. And you can also see as things start getting layered on top, now some of it is starting to come off. Some of the distrust of like things, of people, of situations, right? As our mind kind of starts changing things and shaping things, right? As she starts to have fears come into the mix, right? Stuff that never existed beforehand. And so it's super important for you to remember, and I joke all the time, right? There's that Taylor Swift song, "Hi, it's me, I'm the problem, it's me." I joke all the time that that's the truth because it's usually my overactive brain, right? And my inability to trust myself that is really the problem for why I'm not moving forward at breakneck pace because I haven't done that. And oftentimes we convince ourselves in order to do that, we do need to move at breakneck pace. We need to just like, and it needs to be this big, huge step, right? We just need to like run over there and make 40 different changes. And it's like, actually, that's not true at all. You're right. It's little, small, aligned, easy steps. I told you one time, I was like, wow, that was really a lot easier than I thought it was going to be because it was just something that was like, oh, okay, this simple little step. That's all I got to do. It's just like one little baby step. And so when you create that for yourself, you start finding that everything becomes a heck of a lot easier, not just money, but just all of it.
Right. And one of the things that really helped me, just like a small action step, just as an example, was before I would buy something, I would ask myself, does this align with my values? And that was so simple to do, given it was something that I would have to do every day. But I remember I had just quit my corporate job. I was in Spain doing this epic trip, and I really wanted a Coca-Cola from the mini bar in the hotel. And I was like, does this align with my values? It wasn't expensive. I could afford it, right? But no, it didn't, because it didn't align with the health that I wanted for my body. It just didn't align with the values of the person that I am and the person that I was becoming. And so that was a really small action step, but it changed the entire trajectory of how I spend and look at money.
Yeah, and that is so true and so powerful. And you know, I can't stress enough to people that that is something like little bitty steps like that are just so crazy powerful, because oftentimes we don't even realize that a lot of the little itsy bitsy decisions we're making them out of fear or out of programming or whatever. And we aren't making them out of aligned choices. We're not making them out of, oh, this is actually going to get me to where I want to be. Right. And so as you wrap up, do you have any last thoughts or feelings surrounding that? And then I do think you have an offer you'd like to give to the audience. So I'll let you make that as well.
Well, when it comes to taking that action, you might realize, oh, I didn't take that action. Well, that creates a new level of awareness. So I remember, from my own example, one of my actions was I need to get in and start to look at my numbers on a consistent basis. And for a while, I pushed that away and I didn't do it. But I had to get honest with myself. Why is that, right? It creates a new level of awareness. And it was because I was afraid to look at it, right? So now how can I attack this? How can I manage and deal with and look at that fear? What is that fear? And once you uncover that, now you can continue to keep taking aligned action, serving action for your vision. So I just want to suggest that to the audience, the listener right now is, set that action, allow it to be small. Do you take it? Do you not? Do not let shame come into that factor if you do or don't. Just try and understand why you didn't, and then step again right back into aligned action. And as far as, if you need help with this in your next step of life, going through this transition, going through this reinvention, you can book a free 30-minute clarity call session with me where we will dive in and I will help support you in this transition and reinvention that you're going through.
I love that. And thank you so much for your time, your expertise. Definitely, guys, if this has been something that really has spoken to you, I highly encourage you to connect with Megan. And hopefully this episode has just, sort of awakened something within you, right? If you're going through something or you have been through something recently, or you're thinking about making, some transition, some change, that gives you some new license and some new perspectives, some new action steps you can take to sort of lean in. Because definitely when it comes to the financial aspect, I want you to live your life on your terms and in a way that is aligned and resonates exactly with you. And so we will see you again next week on another episode of Financial Mastery Simplified.